Floor is yours.
I'm quite busy, so I haven't done a lot of studying here. You hear me?
No. You gotta go all the way up front.
Come right on up.
Oh, yeah, front.
Get right in our grill.
Okay, I got just a few comments that I
Okay.
want to make. Let me say that I believe this Sailfish project, in my opinion, should have been disapproved when it was put on the supervisor's desk back in April and May last year. Now, the reason I'm saying that, is because if I was the supervisor, I would have said, it's too big. We need to keep it down to less than 300,000 square feet, which would have been a very appropriate building for that site, 300,000 square feet. And the problem is also over on 416. We're dedicating these spots for 1 million square foot warehouses, and we're really not in the master plan with this. This one for Sailfish here, that was never, never seen that in the codes. I've never seen that in the code. But it was a special use permit that was granted, I believe, by the planning board and the Montgomery board to allow this to become 1 million square foot. In other words, it doesn't say in the codes 1 million square foot are allowed on the gateway. It doesn't say that. It never did. And so that's my point, is that somebody chose to make that happen. And we need to have public hearings for that. These buildings are too large for the people not to be involved with this. So I don't think it's been really calculated out where we're putting these buildings and how large they are. I don't believe that anything outside of Neelytown Road should be larger than 300,000 square feet. Although it's physically possible to put a 1 million square foot building on that ridge, goes south to 84 from 17K, it's a sensitive area, and it really taxes that area ecologically to do that. Such a building is far too large for this sensitive area, and should have been stopped at the beginning of the process here. Because we should have codes that tell us where we can put these buildings. And right now, I see the only place to put them is on Neelytown Road. But let's see, I see a serious problem with the code book here in the big picture. Size does matter, it does. If this project was 1/3 its current design, I don't think we would have a lot of problems with it, okay? Now, I'm surprised at the disturbance that this gentleman said at the beginning here. We went from, did he say 120,000 cubic yards to 12,000? Is that what that?
Export.
Export, yeah.
Yes.
So we went from 120,000 to 12,000.
Export.
Export,
Yes.
yeah. But that's the number that changed. In other words,
Right.
that's the number that changed. I scratch my head and I say, how could that happen? How could you be so far off? That's a big design deficiency to move from one number like that to the other number. That's huge. So that makes me worry a little bit about what they're doing with the rest of it. Now, as I said before, I hear Mr. Garling, who was in this room and pirouetting up and down, telling us all about the gateway, and he basically disqualified Arcal and Rapid Tire, which are two noted businessmen, and they were disqualified from working in that area. They were basically banned. But we got an outside business here with this kind of a project. I don't understand it. Why would you turn down people that are local businesses and like that? Now, thanks to the new code book, on the east side of Maple Avenue, we're going to get a battery plant. That's because they disqualified the 150-foot setback for putting in stores. In other words, you can't do it with that piece of property. So we get a battery plant instead. We should not have that 150-foot setback, that's my point. And we should not have this no parking of cars in the front, because it's changing the area and who can go there. And so battery plants and salvage yards and gigantic buildings seem to be the answer. But, so, so I believe that we should limit the size of these buildings and tell us where you're gonna put them. The planning board has been playing hardball with this code book, and I'm requesting here now this project be put on hold. A public meeting can be held to incorporate in the master plan a limit for the size of buildings outside of Neely Town Road to 250,000 square feet. I'm pretty confident that the public would agree with that if that public meeting was held. I think that they would agree with it. Now, let's move on to the sewer plant here. This really irritates me, this sewer plant. If I do anything, I want to stop this. I thought that the planning board agreed that they were not going to support putting in taking that sewer plant over. I thought that was what it said, but
Yeah,
in
that's true.
but in the
That's true. That's true.
it is.
Yeah.
But in the DC, I think I was reading today, what I said, as soon as the sewer plant is done, it will be dedicated to the town of Montgomery.
No.
That's not true?
Offer of dedication recorded with the county. Montgomery can take the plant in a year or in 100 years
Oh, okay.
or never.
So we're not gonna take it over, okay?
Town board will have the right but not the obligation.
Right. I think that there should be, they should hold that plant a minimum of 5 years before we take it. And we could get a lot better deal than this one of just taking it over and doing it ourselves. We'll get a deal where they'll put in the sewer system over there. Okay, so this Blue Water thing with the sewer plant, it happened in September of last year, which was like 6 months before we were holding the meetings in January. And so that was all taken care of. And so I'm attending all the meetings from January all to this day. And this is a deal that's done. There was a reason for that. There was a reason for it, and Blue Water knows it. That was a make or break decision for Blue Water. In other words, if they did not get the town of Montgomery to give them in writing an approval by the board, a letter that said that they were going to take it, they would not continue due diligence. That's my guess at that particular situation, which means that we were incorporating Montgomery into the role played by Blue Water in this project, and I don't think we should do that. It should be a town public meeting that says we're going to take that plant over. Now let's see what else. Okay. Okay, comments that were rejected in the final D's that I've seen in there was that there was some comments from people, including myself, that the plant is being built in the swamp, and the comment from the consultant coming back, it says, it's not being built in the swamp, it's being built on hard rock. Well, okay, I take that back. Let me give you a better characterization. It's like a medieval castle being built with a moat around it, and the moat being the swamp, okay? And, it's just, you can't dismiss that. If you get an aerial shot of the thing, you're gonna see it's surrounded by this watery thing here. But, they can technically do this. I agree, the engineering can be done, to do this, but you can't reduce the impact that's going to come from this. I think the town is a little bit over-optimistic about what's going to be the benefit of this plant that they're putting in. It's consumerism. you're betting on consumerism. Well, I got a slogan. The slogan is less of more. We need less worthless trash. And more with less. We need better products, so we need to use less consuming. That should be the future. That should be the slogan of the future. We don't need all this garbage. This stuff stocked in the shelves of Blue Water building is going to have a 2-year life cycle. And it's gonna end up in the trash. I can't tell you how many things I've thrown out. You won't believe it. I buy them, and 6 months later, I'm throwing them out. This consumerism is out of control. Out of control. Okay. Less of more with less. That's the future. Okay. Now, nobody is saying that this land can't be developed. I would never say that. The people have every right to develop their land. It's only a question of size. What size are we going to allow for that development? 300,000 square feet would be a very appropriate building in that area. And in the east, it says, well, if it doesn't go, this building doesn't go, then you're going to have vacant land there. Well, not for long, because that area for that location is attractive, and it's going to pull somebody in. So we'll get somebody, but maybe not this one. At any rate, thank you very much for your time.
All right.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, yes, sir.
Back again. Tom Walcott from Maybrook. In the beginning of the public hearing, there was made mention from the engineer that they were going to install a retention pond for firefighting.
Wet pond, yes.
Wet pond?
Yes.
Now, is that in conjunction with the water tank that was noted in the report?
There's a tank and there's also a pond.
So there would be two of them. Okay, will there be like standpipes installed in that pond?
There's a standpipe to the pond on the entrance road going in along the septic
Okay,
tank.
okay, thank you.
Well, yes, Sheree.
Yes, sir, thank you for acknowledging me. Just a question, thought. There's a silo still remaining there near
Yeah.
the corner, I believe. Has the board considered requesting that they leave it there? And I often picture it when I come in as a way of creating positive tourism. I understand that this is conflicting use, but perhaps if we can get them to maintain it and be willing, I look at it as an entry point where I would love the Hudson Valley artist people to design a mural to welcome them to our area, and I think it's kind of important. That was just
Okay.
a thought, I don't know if it's done. And the second thing I'd like to say is reviewing the zoning book, we know times have changed, we know our situation. But my question or my point is how many mega warehouses has this town handled?
How many do we have?
How many mega warehouses have we, or a mega warehouse of huge size, this a million or better, how many has this town reviewed and handled?
Staples is about 900, Baxter's is like eight or nine, UNFI's 5 and change, Do It Best, there's 8 maybe that are over $500,000,
And that's the site or just the building?
Just the building.
just the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm just surprised that with the advent of mega warehousing, we have solar batteries or I'm not sorry, solar battery sites, solar, you know what I mean, solar cell sites, we put on hold. But yet, mega warehouses are really an advent that's only come into play at this size. And we have no zoning rules that are particularly handling them, yet we handle them. So that was the question, and thank you for the answer.
Yes, Susan?
Yeah, a town problem is with I have 5 things that I wanted to say.
Okay,
You know, you have a wastewater treatment plant that's supposed to go on there, and the only reason you need the treatment plant is because they're using every available square footage to put the structure on. And wastewater treatment technology, you know, the big plants and the centralized plants are a thing of the past. Land treatment technology is superior. We can't use it on here because there's no leftover space. I question why the local law for wetlands protection isn't coming into play. Mr. Featherston said it didn't apply here. In the documents, it talks about using the Tinbrook, which is an intermittent stream. I take offense at that being used as a drainage ditch. Also, the rain frequency diagrams or histograms that they're using for runoff, I suggest that they use up-to-date current stormwater numerical values that are local to the area. I agree with Ms. Lerner here that you need a supplemental environmental impact statement. New York is a home rule state, and there's just too much influence coming in from outside, which leads to my next statement. I asked once before, the Mid-Hudson Regional Economic Development Council had set aside $4 million in our tax dollars for this project. Once I left office, there were no more grant applications at all, and there hasn't been any. I asked who was it that applied for that $4 million to come into town to put an outside private entity into our midst, because the Mid-Hudson Regional Economic Development Council has 3 categories: live, work, and play. If the town had asked for that money, they could have done any kind of open space preservation or farmland enhancement. You know, a number of things could have been done with $4 million that are our taxes. But they have this warehouse, mega warehouse, under the category of live. And it's taking up, like the gentleman said, it is like a medieval structure with a moat around it. That water, this moat, is the water that goes to Walden eventually and becomes part of their drinking water. I mean, there's been so many instances historically in this northern latitude, like IBM and Fishkill, which absolutely destroyed Fishkill's aquifer. It's done. That's gonna be the taxpayers that are gonna pay for a water treatment plant eventually. I really would like to know who applied for this $4 million to come into Montgomery for some rumor to be Amazon. No one really knows what it's for, but why are our tax dollars coming back in this format? And why are we giving special exception permits or even considering them when you have a business owner here, Ms. Lerner, who should really be singing her products and her business's praises like Tarzan? I mean, they have John Chamberlain's, Frank Stella's, they have internationally.
They don't.
They don't care. Sometimes, you know, it's hard to make a person understand something when their paycheck relies on them not understanding it. She has international artists coming to her facility, making statues and sculptures that are world-renowned. She allows for interns to go there and get into the arts right at that facility, right at the corner of 17K and 747, and you're looking to put in something that she's going to be compromised by when she already has a business here. She's not causing any problems. We don't have meetings here that are packed because Barbara Lerner's facility is causing traffic problems. Are they getting a pilot? I mean, they want to have a reduction in the town IDA law that says 85% local workers. I was here when they wanted to reduce that to 60 or below. That's town taxpayer dollars. Additionally, the Bean Planning Report, which you never looked at, which was done during my tenure, and voted on by at least a majority of the board in order to pass, states clearly that the Coldenham National Site on the National Historic Register should be seen as a focal point to our town. That has been totally disregarded. One last thing, the reason that the residents here are worried about how long they have to review these DEISs and FEISs is because the residents have lost faith in any due diligence on the part of the board. Ever since you put the Dollar General in across from Valley Central Middle School and High School, I worked there, and all day long on the loudspeaker, you have people frantically encouraging the kids not to dart across the street between class changes. You caused a huge problem, and now our taxes have to pay for a red light there that was never supposed to go in like that, the school opposed it.
We're talking about Sailfish, I appreciate everything. Yes, John?
You don't mind, could I sit on the edge of the table?
Sure.
My sciatic is killing me after sitting at my desk reading 4,000 pages of documents. For those of you who don't know me by now, I'm John Brown. I live in Coldenham, and my main focus throughout this has been the Tin Brook, which flows through our farm, the National Historic Site. Throughout this process, residents have come forward many times. I mean, I've written letters, Barbara, a whole bunch of us have brought many letters forward. They're all documented in the appendix, which is good. You'll see it's been a continuum of items, and it's not just opinions from us. These are things that have been substantiated by professional engineers and either outside agencies, outside attorneys. So it's not just opinions of residents. It is valid information. And at the July 8th meeting, which is not that long ago, I came forward and felt at that point it was worthwhile to highlight for the board a summary of my key items that I felt need to be addressed. And brought forward 4 items which I felt in all prior documents and submissions from the applicant had been ignored. I followed up the presentation with a written letter to the board on July 10th, which I'm sure is in your file. And I really hoped that these comments would at least be addressed and incorporated in the final FEIS. Well, we got the FEIS released a little over a week ago. I found it amazing that as we looked through that, there was a ton of new information in there. The SWIP in there was just submitted July 25th, yet the FEIS is dated July 5th. So there's inconsistencies in that. In fact, Andrew verified tonight that he hasn't completed his review on the SWIP, on the sewer, or the site plan. How in hell can you let an FEIS go forward when key elements that determine environment haven't been looked at and reviewed? How in the world can you have that happen? Those are not trivial changes. Those are major changes. Do you put the sewer in the Tin Brook or put it in the ground? Do you have runoff that affects everybody downstream? Those are all determined by that. Does the site plan allow for a septic system? Those are all key things, and you have not even reviewed them at this point in time. Anyway, the other thing in the FEIS, and it was actually confirmed by one of the representatives here tonight, he said, we've made some minor cleanup changes, maybe did something with the traffic, but really haven't done too much else. They've ignored major comments that we've been putting forward for 6 months. So as an example, let's look at what they say about unavoidable adverse impacts. By the way, this is page 3,358 of volume 2, in case you want to look it up. He said, there are, however, this unavoidable adverse impacts, that's the chapter title. There are, however, others that will have a permanent or long-term environmental impacts. Most of these are the unavoidable impact of the development process. What in the world is an unavoidable impact of the development process? The impacts that cannot be avoided will be mitigated through reduction of impacts to the greatest extent possible. What in the world does that mean? By the way, they use those terms, maximum extent practical, in at least 30 instances in the FEIS. 30 times they use that. Qualitative statement. The impacts that cannot be avoided will be mitigated maximum extent possible. They also use in the applicant's opinion in many areas. These are purely subjective. No supporting documentation is brought forward or alternative approaches clearly identified to substantiate those conclusions. And as I'll show you in a minute, their actual data directly refutes their conclusion on stormwater runoff. And I'll get to that in a minute. It seems to them the maximum extent practical means don't do anything to disrupt what we want to do or cost them anything. To us, it means that they will not cause impact to the environment, neighbors, or the community, and they have not addressed that. So let me get to my 4 items, and I'll summarize just those. I'm not going to read through all these things, so don't worry about that one. I'm just going to cover the 4 items that I brought up before
Okay.
in July 10th. So let's take a look and see how they responded to this in the FEIS. Number 1, and as the board well knows, my major issue has been stormwater runoff, overall runoff increase from any project onto surrounding neighbors or downstream events. And as you well know, I have tried like hell to try and get this board to address that. This is something that's very hard for me to say because I've been on this board, but you as a board have been negligent in requiring conformance to that law. And I'll show you why. We started, by the way, for those of you who don't know, the local law specifically says minimize the total annual volume of stormwater runoff which flows from any specific site during and following development to the maximum extent practical. This was put in place because all of us would not want your neighbor to do something that floods you out, floods your lawn out, floods your septic system out. That's why this was put in place. Law was enacted in 2005. And some of you members, and I won't point out who, were there and served with me on the board when that was in place. Well, maybe you forgot, so that's why in January I specifically identified the text of the law that is available on the town website and pointed that out. And was told by the applicant's consultant that that didn't matter, that I was wrong in addressing stormwater quality. That's the response that was given. By the way, even though it's been pointed out to you for 6 months, no one was asked to comply to that. Now, we don't have the meeting minutes of any of these meetings, but I couldn't recollect anybody on this board saying to the applicant, you better control your total stormwater runoff. Didn't find that once. By the way, the consultant engineer's response and his latest summary letter for all of the comments presented, by the way, this was July 31st, just 12 days ago, 61 pages of comments that the consultant provided to the applicant. Not once is overall stormwater volume from the site mentioned as a requirement or the local law. 61 pages of comments, and not once was it required to address that local law. Finally, I got fed up with this. It's my time. My time.
Okay.
No, he's gonna answer your question.
Okay,
right now.
answer the question now.
Yeah, the rule says, section 2.5, minimize the total annual volume of stormwater runoff which flows from any specific site during and following development to the maximum extent practicable. That's what the law reads.
Yes.
And it's being minimized because they're implementing the new stormwater development code from the state, which has runoff reduction and water quality reduction. That's how you reduce the volumes under the latest permit, John. John, we've talked about this so many times. You keep
And I keep, it's
misstating.
it's common sense that you don't flood out your neighbor.
It's absolutely common sense, and that's done by rates, rate control.
It's not
John.
rate. It is not just rate, it's total volume.
I'm sorry, John, I disagree.
I disagree too.
Total volume.
I was there, I initiated that.
Susan was there when it's initiated.
Right, she's a stormwater expert.
Hold on, state.
Okay, what's interesting is that law wasn't even addressed, and everybody on this board kept quiet about it until Richard verified on at the July 3rd meeting that he actually wrote that law and put it in town code.
No, John, please, DEC wrote the model law, so
And you
I
do-
didn't write the law,
You confirmed it
please.
for town of Montgomery. You adapted it for town of Montgomery.
Not just me, the town engineer, everybody in town government had a hand in the model law, so please, don't say I wrote the law, it's not true.
You're the attorney.
Attorney.
You
No,
wrote
I
the
said
law.
I didn't write the
Hey,
law.
calm down.
Will you please not put, please don't say things that aren't true.
The DEC wrote the law.
Hold on,
and I had her
John's got the
come in
floor.
I got the floor.
after-
Wait a minute, Susan, let me finish. We disagree on that interpretation, and I think a reasonable person would say, don't flood out your neighbor and don't increase the volume.
Mixed words.
I'm not mixing words. By the way, they say in chapter 7, page 3358, there is no increase in the amount or decrease in the quality of stormwater leaving the site. They say there's no increase in the amount of stormwater leaving the site. There is an increase. There's an absolute increase. Matter of fact, it's their data, not mine. I didn't make this data up. They have data, and if I go to this chart, and it's in there, they basically say how much stormwater comes here over into Timbrook, how much goes up here, and how much goes over here. And those of you who are familiar with stormwater planning know the forms, and I can show them to you, but Andrew's familiar with it. But basically what it says is it looks at how much goes off-site, how much went off-site before, and with their new plan, they go through every particular culvert, retention plan, and everything else. And the end figure that they have in there is the total amount that's going off-site after development versus before development. Well, let's take a look at what actually goes off-site. They were right, they did some things to improve it. They created impervious surface, or a pervious pavement, made a big deal out of that. They have a 25-acre parking lot, and they did 1 acre of pervious pavement, okay? That helped, yeah, that helped somewhat, it did. So we looked at, and from their latest SWIP, which is 725, we calculated it. Before, by the way, from back in December, their increase in total stormwater going off the site, after all these improvements that they made, was increased by 86%, almost double the stormwater going off the site. That's their figures, I didn't make this up. That's their figures on the design points. And by the way, they did improvement with the changes that they made. Big improvement. Now it's only 82% is going off-site, still almost doubling the amount of total stormwater going off this site. So their statement of there's no increase in stormwater quantity is absolutely wrong, absolutely wrong. I don't know how in good conscience anybody can make that statement. Okay, wastewater treatment plant we've talked about. On-site was recommended by DEC for systems less than 30,000 per day. There's concerns by many engineering groups about the operational liability of this plant. Personally, I think it's a travesty to turn the Tinbrook into a wastewater discharge point for everybody downstream in the village. They have some solutions. They said, oh, well, we looked at a sewer system. It doesn't fit in our site plan. Change the site plan. That's not fixed. Change the site plan so it does fit in. That as a priority that you're not going to discharge off-site. If you do that, design a site plan to fit it. Don't tell us that site plan is fixed. Why don't you fix improve it to potable standards and drink it on-site? You can do that too. Okay. Third item is usage of salt. We've had many comment letters. I mean, the town itself has known town wells have been impacted by salt on 84. You drive anywhere, eliminate salt. Maser Consulting told them salt is soluble in water and not mitigated by state-approved stormwater mitigation devices. Reduction, elimination of snowmelt salts are reducing the impacts. The applicant's answer on page 2-213 is salt will be used on this site. So they've ignored everybody's comments about using salt. They further state that it'll be reduced in parking areas that accommodate the seasonal parking demand. So if people aren't parking there, they're not gonna use it. Well, a clue, you know, Christmas is in the wintertime when you have most of the people there. You're gonna be using all that parking lot. Think about it. In other areas, they put, oh, we're gonna put the snow and the salt near the bioretention basins. Salt isn't treated by bioretention basins. In fact, it hurts bioretention basins. And if you use sand, you could sort that out before it even got in the bioretention basin. Last item is construction impacts. This is a big project, and we've all seen in the papers what's happened with Legoland in this county and what that's caused. Recognize that that project, as for this project, had DEC, town board approval, involved agencies approved, and the engineering firm was a local engineering firm. What's the end result that came out of that? After all those people said, this is no problem, 28 DEC citations, multiple town citations, stop work orders, minimal fines, but destruction of the otter kill. So in spite of all those people saying this is a great thing, look what happened. We should make sure that our approval process doesn't let that happen here. Now they claim, they claim they're gonna do improvements over the New York State requirements. They'll pay for an inspector to come in that's hired by the town. Why not pay for an independent inspector to be on site all the time to make sure what happens, make sure things don't happen here. And by the way, the town has deficiencies in its commercial inspections. You need an independent outside consultant. We do have a new company that has been, I guess, brought in by the town board to do that, but it truly should be an independent assessor. That particular company, by the way, is affiliated with the Orange County Partnership, as is Blue Water, as is Langen Engineering. Is that truly an independent assessment that's going to be done? And will the current building inspector and stormwater officer overrule it? The real problem is inspections don't solve the problem. Oh, we found a problem, it rained and we got runoff. Oh, okay, you told me that, well, let me fix that. Oh, I didn't fix it, I'm gonna do it again. The real thing is enforcement provisions. The DEC does have $37,500 a day per violation if you do it. But in the scope of these projects, that's minimal. They also require up to 15 years imprisonment per violation for the principals. Now I have to agree that 15 years imprisonment for the suits over here for a violation is a little high. Maybe 1 year would be appropriate for each violation. 1 year. Okay.